Yeah, I bet you thought that comment on the eShop video was a joke. Well, you'd be wrong there, in case it isn't evident already. Time to talk about why I use TF2 footage for many videos, as well as why I don't use other footage all the time. So the short version is... well, I just like it. TF2 is a fun game, so long as the server you're in hasn't been overrun by bots. It's a fun enough game to watch, and I'd go so far as to call it my podcast game. As in, whenever I'm listening to something that doesn't require much or any actual viewing of the video portion itself, you know, like a podcast, I'll generally play TF2 while listening to it, which is perfectly fine so long as you don't have to listen for audio cues like spies uncloaking. TF2 is, in my mind, a great game just to look at without it being too distracting. It also isn't too repetitive either. Now, I promise this is going somewhere. I like gameplay in a video to look interesting, but not be distracting either. For example, I could have easily used gameplay from a Nintendo game in the previous video, but something about using that has always felt off. Maybe it's just a bit too bright and vibrant, or things move a bit too slowly sometimes. In fact, let's take the 3 most recent Nintendo games I've played as of the time of writing this. Mario Party Superstars, Miitopia, and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. All 3 of these are good games in their own right, however there's a problem with all 3 of these. Mario Party is either too slow on the party boards because, well, it's the boards section, so of course it won't be the most fast-paced thing ever, or the mini-games, being, well, mini-games, change too quickly. It'd feel awkward changing minigame footage every 30 to 60 seconds. I also like to keep footage of menus to a minimum, as that might cause the viewer to stop to look at it only to realize it's just, well, a score menu. Next we have Miitopia. This one has an even bigger issue since it's an RPG, and that means there's even more menus and it goes slowly at times, so I don't feel like it's good for gameplay footage. It feels like things just keep stopping. Also, anything at the ends are basically a no-go, so there's that too. And finally, we have Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. This leans into another big problem. Some games I just sort of suck at. To be fair, this was my first time ever playing through Tropical Freeze, but ultimately that's what I would have had for gameplay. So yeah, I guess if you want to watch me die a bunch of times in that game, that might have been interesting to watch, I guess. But there's another big issue with some of these. Watching some of these games would get a bit repetitive. In fact, so would most games in my opinion. In a single player game, you can only replay the same level so many times before it starts to feel the same. Take Sonic Adventure for example. Great game, but not so great for gameplay footage. I can only play through Speed Highway so many times before everyone knows what's going to happen. Sure, I could mix things up with a different spin dash here or there, but ultimately the enemies are going to be in the same place all the time, every single time I play it, and I can just race through the level to the end. FPS games mix this up a bit, and I'd say it's doubly so for a multiplayer one. Even though the level layout is the same, the payload cart might have changed position since I respawned. The heavy that was in one area probably isn't there anymore, or there might be a scout running towards me with a fish thinking he's smart. Everything's also fairly rapidly paced, which keeps things going for the most part, instead of long portions of gameplay footage where there's nothing going on. And finally, it isn't too distracting. I don't know what it is, but something about some other games being used as gameplay footage just bugs me. Even as I'm recording this, I can't quite explain what's wrong with it. I just know there's something off. So, what's my ultimate goal with gameplay footage? I like gameplay that helps to be entertaining and interesting to look at, but not annoying or distracting from what I'm talking about either. At the end of the day, I believe that TF2 footage has always fit that best for me. Oh, and plus I have tons of it laying around, and it's fairly easy to get more so long as the server isn't overrun with bots. Well, there you go. For the 3 people here who want to know why I use TF2 gameplay in my videos so often, that's why. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to exclusively use gameplay from just that game, especially if it doesn't relate that much. The reason I used it in videos about Nintendo, of course, was because those have had less to do with Nintendo's games, much more as they've had to do with Nintendo as a company. If I ever decide to discuss actual Nintendo games at length, Yeah, I'll probably use actual footage of Nintendo games for that. Well, that's all for now. Hopefully you guys understand all of this. Of course, if any of you do have recommendations for other gameplay I could use, I'd love to hear it. Thank you all for watching, and take care.